Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Through the Eyes of a Therapist podcast. I'm Crystal Acosta and my co-host, Andrea Luna.
Hi, everyone. We have a cool episode today to talk about some things that have been coming up, I think, more and more often, whether it's in session or just like in my personal life with people I know, things like that. But I want to start us off with a few questions. And the first one is, have you ever felt responsible for everyone else's emotions? And do you struggle to say no?
Yeah. So why do you think this happens?
Well, great question. Thank you for asking. Just kidding. Today, we're actually going to be talking about how growing up with emotionally immature parents can really shape us in adulthood and how we respond to relationships moving forward.
Yes. And so we want to make a few things clear. For example, we're not blaming anybody or hating on parents.
Yeah, no.
And
maybe a little bit.
Maybe, okay. Well, maybe. But really, I think we have to understand that sometimes our parents have their own histories and their own stories and their own past. And sometimes they can lack emotional maturity. Yeah. And everybody has their flaws, right? But we're just here to talk about it and bring some light to this pretty common experience, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad you said that, too, because we can't forget that emotional immaturity exists on a spectrum. You know, it's not black or white. There's not only one right or wrong answer. It depends on your experience as a person. And so sometimes we can also forget that our parents are individuals who went through stuff. So today is about kind of bridging those experiences together and understanding and finding awareness and healing, but knowing that we don't have to just point fingers.
Exactly. You are right.
So what do you think, or how would you define emotionally immature?
Emotionally immature?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we should start with what is emotional maturity, right? Because then we can say, this is what is mature, and then compared to that, this is what's immature.
That's true.
Maybe. So I think emotional maturity has to do with emotional intelligence. So being able to name emotions, express them appropriately. And, you know, what I mean by express appropriately is, this is how I explain it to parents of like child clients, for example, is that if you cry because you're sad and you're in front of your child and you cry, I think a lot of parents are afraid of doing that. Yeah. But somebody who's emotionally mature, I feel like could handle potentially crying in front of their child because they're sad, then naming the situation and naming the feeling and explaining that to the child.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. So maybe there's like grief in the home, maybe a beloved pet or something that affects the whole family, right? Like the child and the parents or the guardians. And then the parents are really sad. So I think part of it is also cultural. I know that like in Mexican families, like in mine, emotion is kind of not
like a far off concept.
Yeah, it's like not prioritized. It's actually made fun of sometimes, right? Like,
eres bien chillona.
Yeah, chillona. Don't cry. ¿Por qué estás llorando? Why are you crying?
Or like, I'll give you a reason to cry.
I'll give you a reason, right? Like, why are you crying? You're, oh my God. So then you shut it down right away, right? So it could be either because somebody's mocking you or there's like a threat of harm. But let's say that this grief affects the whole family, and then the child is sad, obviously. Everybody's sad. Parents might not want to emote in front of their child and cry. I think something that I've heard parents say is that they're afraid of like losing it or not being able to come back from it. I don't even know what would happen. Then at that point we process like, what does that mean exactly? Like you're going to like lose your mind. Like do you really believe that you would never come back from crying?
Yeah, that sounds like like an underlying
like core belief or cognitive distortion kind of thing, right? So then that would be an example of like displaying emotional immaturity, maybe, is not being able to express it appropriately. Yeah, or being afraid to, right? Like avoiding emoting or avoiding emotion. Another good way to put emotional maturity is being able to identify the feeling in others and empathizing with them, right? So if the child is sad about something, like yesterday, my poor child got his tooth pulled out. And I think an emotionally immature response would be something like, I see that you're scared. I see that you're sad, and just kind of like really approach him even with like an empathetic face. Like, yeah, it is scary and sad. And you're going to hear noises, or you're going to hear like, or feel tools or feel pressure, but it doesn't mean that somebody's hurting you. We're doing this for your health. Like really trying to explain and empathize and validate, but also not get taken over by the emotion. So that's also a sign of maturity, right? Is not making somebody's emotion your own.
That takes vulnerability, though.
It does. Yeah, you're right. So vulnerability, emotional intelligence, these are things that are adjacent to or akin to emotional maturity. So like an emotionally immature response for my child would have been like, why are you crying? They didn't really hurt you. Are you dead? Did you die? You know what I mean? Like, that's like, oh my God. And that might even sound familiar. Like we're laughing, right? But like
a lot of us have received those messages.
Yeah, we have. Like,
hence why this topic exists.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So if that was familiar to you, we're going to be talking about that today, that emotional immaturity in parents.
Yeah. So just to recap, I guess some emotional immaturity now might look like, difficulty regulating emotions or recognizing regarding emotions, right? Like being able to notice that in themselves and in their child, struggling to validate the emotions when they arise, right? And that's a really important one because it reminds us that we don't have to fix. We just have to be aware that an emotion comes up. And I think that a lot of the struggles is that as adults, we try to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we feel like we don't have control of a situation and then we become defensive, that's when the harm actually happens. There's no harm in saying, this sucks and I don't know how to help you, but I'm here with you. That's completely different than saying like, this sucks and I can't fix it for you and I'm just going to get pissed at you because I can't fix it and you're crying and I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
So different.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned fixing, and something else that I tell parents is try not to be a fix-it Felix, like from Wreck-It Ralph. He goes around and he tries to fix everything with his hammer or whatever. And sometimes it's functional, but sometimes it's not, right? So sometimes you can take a fixing approach and that's helpful in some situations, but especially with emotions, it's a little bit, I think, more nuanced, and like a fixing solution focused sort of approach might not work.
Yeah. So I think with that being said, though, emotional immaturity isn't being the same as a bad parent. It's about how much emotions we're able to hold and deciding what to do with that. So I think today's discussion could be controversial to some because, yes, we're making space today, also recognizing that our parents maybe have fucked up, but also they're allowed to, because they're human. And the whole point is to repair, right? So maybe you have a relationship with a parent that's still tumultuous, but then they're trying now in the future to make attempts at repair. That means something, right? That means that they recognize their mistakes and they want to move forward. And it's up to us. The ball is in our court at that point to decide if it's good for us or not. But let's discuss maybe some signs that their emotional immaturity may have affected us. So the first one that I want to discuss is you become hyper-aware of other people's emotions. You are policing emotions because you grew up having to like feel the room out first.
Right. Yeah, because it was dangerous to maybe, or unsafe, or dangerous, either one, to walk into a room where there's unpredictability or chaos, or somebody's emotions are not safe or predictable. You don't know how that person's going to be reacting. So it's important to be hyper vigilant, almost like for a survival purpose or survival reaction.
I think of an example that happened lately that I was discussing with my own therapist. That was really cool. Well, I guess cool to me because we have the knowledge, right? But we were talking about how anxiety and like these intense thought loops revert back to dialogue from my parents. So the way that they responded to situations, even though I know now as an adult that their intention was like well-natured, like it was like with having my health and good in mind.
Right. They weren't being malicious.
No, they weren't. But the way that they responded to everything with such urgency created that same urgency for me. So for me, it happened to be around health. your head hurts. Oh my God, let's go to the doctor. Let's get you scans. Should we go to the hospital? Or like I played sports all my life. So it was like, okay, oh my God, you sprained your ankle. We have to take you to the ER and you have to wear crutches and all this stuff. So then as an adult, every time there's a different sensation in my body, straight into that. Oh my God, something's wrong. I'm having an emergency. I need to get this fixed. And how interesting though, right? Because that created the kind of like the blueprint moving forward. Like, oh, you always have to be on edge because you don't know when something bad's going to happen. But a function that was essentially correct for a parent led to something a little distressing in the future.
For sure. Yeah, because at that point, maybe sometimes when we have to be hyper aware of other people's emotions as a child, it's adaptive, meaning it's helpful. But then later on, when everything's safe, you're in a safe relationship, you live by yourself, like whatever it is, you have good friendships, and then you're like hyper aware, hyper vigilant, then it can become maladaptive, right? And then depending on how you behave, then that can cause like, I don't know, some dysfunction in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you become really good at noticing everyone's mood before they even spoke? Is something to consider.
I actually want to reference this meme that I saw and that I still come across sometimes on Instagram that says like, did you grow up in a chaotic home? Or, if you grew up in a chaotic home, what was your therapy practice called now? Or something like that. Because it's like, I think sometimes the skill of being able to empathize and identify emotion really fast is something we learned throughout childhood. And so we became really damn good at it. And now it's like, oh, I get to do that for a job, right? It's interesting. Anyway, I'd like to take some time right now to remind you to follow us on Instagram at ClarityEP and at Through the Eyes of a Therapist, which is our podcast page. We also have a TikTok, TTEOAT, Through the Eyes of a Therapist podcast, right? And then also on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. So the second way that emotionally or being raised by emotionally immature parents can show up in our lives today is that we struggle to identify our own needs. Like, I'm fine, everything's fine, like the dog inside the room that's on fire. Letting others decide, being indecisive, not really understanding or knowing yourself, right? And then also feeling disconnected from yourself.
Yeah, I think of a lot of people that I've come across, just like in life in general, when they're like, you pick. No, you pick. No, I can't decide. You pick. And I'm like, no, like, go ahead. And it's so interesting because if you're an assertive person like me, coming across those people can be like kind of conflictive because then it can become like well, this person's always deciding. Or like, we always have to do what this person says. But I wonder if it's that or if it's like, well, I don't feel comfortable making decisions because I haven't healed that part.
Yeah, it could be that you don't want to maybe like take the fall or the blame or be accountable if something goes wrong. Because maybe back then, right? Like if a parent came across as emotionally immature and they made all the decisions and they were in charge, or you decided to do something one day and made your own choice, you got into a lot of trouble for it or something. Yeah. I think that also it's because a child's needs become second, right? Instead of the parent putting the child's needs first. Yeah.
I always reference back to this study that I read a long time ago. But it was supposed to be like on babies and like sleep training babies. And so the whole thing was that like whenever the baby cried, right? And if like the parent, the caretaker didn't respond to their needs, the baby learned to stop crying. Not because the baby's like, I am sleep trained and I should be asleep, because no, but the baby learned that like its needs weren't going to be addressed, so that there was no point in crying. And I'm like, like at that age, how heartbreaking, right? And so think about it this way too. Like, since it started for some of us, it may have started that early that like moving forward, it was just like, it's better for me to keep myself safe by making sure that I can read everybody's mood and find a way to adjust. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, because they're putting the needs of the adults first, right? Like in that case, I think you're referring to the cry it out method.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of problematic. As a trauma therapist, if parents ever ask me about that, I'm like, no, I don't believe in that. And that's exactly the reason why, is because you are communicating to your infant who is helpless and needs you to survive for them and to co-regulate for them, right? That their needs are not important. So then they just kind of like shut down, and that's like not good. So maybe ask your parents, did you make me cry it out?
Oh,
You think?
really?
I wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
That should be in like an assessment.
Actually, that might be a really good, or like a PTSD assessment.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody study that.
Hey, somebody study that. Yeah.
Make us co-authors again. Just kidding. Anyway.
Another one is though, boundaries feel selfish. Saying yes often when maybe you want to say no, feeling guilty after you set a boundary. I think this is a big one that I hear often. Or over explaining yourself. Feeling like you have to justify your answers at every turn. Boundaries are hard because you learned either there's no such thing as boundaries and your family is super enmeshed, or that you weren't allowed to have boundaries because it wasn't going to serve your caretakers.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like in my brain, like thinking of the people that I know where if, let's say I set a boundary or my husband sets a boundary for us, like as a family, and people get pissed off about it. And it's like, well, but we're looking out for our own best interest, or for our child, for example, right? And so sometimes boundaries are not respected. This has a cultural piece to it, though, I think, because I just want to say, like, for Mexican families, because I'm Mexican, right? So, like, what I've noticed is that when somebody upholds a boundary, it's almost like betrayal, or like you're going, you don't care about us. And they're like, like they just make themselves like the victim kind of thing. But I also think it might have roots in like colonization, right? Because it's like survival, right? Like if you separate from the clan or whatever, that's like death.
Perish.
Right. So it's like a protective thing, but it's no longer protective.
You don't need it.
It's maladaptive at this point, right? When you're trying to live your own life and move forward.
Something that I say often in session to people who are like struggling with boundaries is that as we're learning to set a boundary, it tends to feel the hardest because the people who you're setting boundaries on or need to set boundaries on will make you the villain for a little bit because obviously they don't like it. Right? They're used to somebody overextending themselves over and over every time for them. And obviously, if you're on the receiving end of that, it's going to feel like I'm missing something now and I'm not like a fan of it. So it's something that we have to get comfortable with, I think, initially.
Yeah. Can I give you my metaphor for boundary setting really quick? Okay, so and if you're a client listening to this may sound familiar, but I like to describe it as like being a vending machine. So let's say that you are a vending machine.
Okay.
And every time I put in my $1 and I push E6, I get a candy, a payday, a crunch, whatever, right? Okay. And I do that every day. Oh, I'm sorry. Snickers, Twix, is that better? I know. Payday,
I don't know. Crunch. You apparently.
I really don't. Those are so gross. I don't know why I chose those two.
Or a bag of Cheetos.
Okay, a bag of hot Cheetos, Takis, whatever, right? And every day consistently for years and years and years, I put the $1 in and I get that out, right? And then one day, vending machine decides I'm going to uphold my boundary and I'm going to not give her Cheetos because I don't want to have this relationship with her anymore. She just gives me, it's transactional. She gives me $1 and then I have to give her Cheetos and it's not fair. Whatever her reasoning is, she decides why. So then I come to her one day, I put my $1 in, and then my Cheetos get stuck. Okay, so then what do people do on the end? They shake it, right? So their behavior becomes more intense. They try to push the boundary. Yeah. They try to get what they want. They'll go so far as punching the glass through. They'll like get their friend, hey, come help me push the machine so I can get it out, push buttons. So all kinds of behavior intensifies because this is how she functioned her whole life, our lives, our experience together. And now all of a sudden she wants to set this boundary. What the fuck, right? So then, of course, I get mad. So that's how I describe it to them. Like,
that's a great example.
You are a vending machine who's just deciding either your price has gone up or that button don't work anymore or whatever your reasoning could be. And you don't really owe anybody an explanation, right? It's just you've decided that's your boundary now.
Yeah. That's such a good way to see it. I want to continue off of that point, though, that eventually we become the caretakers, right? Because we've had to allow somebody to push our buttons enough and then or shake us enough, right? That we give in, or that we've had to monitor their emotions and police their reactions. Eventually we take on the role of the actual parent. And that's a lot. This looks like the parentified child, the therapist friend, right? Or just being the mom friend that fixes everybody's issues. When in reality, those are roles that take a lot of emotional energy and physical energy.
I wonder if that has anything to do with being the eldest Mexican daughter.
Oh, that's yeah, I'm the oldest in both of our families by a lot. And I think so. Yes, because I think at least I'm applying to myself, right? But you grow up in an environment where it's all adults. But then if you are in an environment where it's a very dysfunctional family with a lot of immature adults, you would develop those same mechanisms. Because I think when I was going through my time as a teenager, I was very similar to my family. Very reactive, very impulsive, and I want to say argumentative, peleonera. And it wasn't until I was yeah, this is not it. My body is getting sick, all those things. Then it was oh, I found my peace now. But you were saying though, right? Because of our Hispanic families and they're not used to really boundary setting, it became a lot of oh, la prima que está isolated, or the one that doesn't come visit us. And it's no, I can't take this.
For my own sanity.
Yeah, this is a lot. There's always beef here, and I don't want to. I was looking at a meme on Instagram the other day. Well, I don't know if it's a meme, I guess, but it said something I'd rather be called a bitch than be chronically ill, or something like that. And I was
yeah. Yes, because self-sacrifice and martyrdom, what does that get you?
Burnout. And we just talked about it last episode. So go back and check it out.
Another sign that you may have been raised by emotionally immature parents is when criticism feels devastating.
That's a tough one.
It is hard. Sense of wanting to be perfect all the time or not wanting to disappoint someone else. How do you think people get from A to B here, right? So let's say the parent reacts a certain way. Yep. How does the parent react in order for a child to internalize, I can't do anything wrong? I must be perfect.
I think there's several ways. I think one would be just outright oh, you fuck up, you get everything wrong. Da, 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 da.
Emotional, verbal abuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think another one could be maybe a little more or a little less direct, more nonverbal cues. I don't know, you spill a cup of water and your parents are or hurry, go clean it up. When it's a glass of spilled water is not gonna fuck anybody up, right?
Right.
Because it's their own urgency that is wanting to attend to the situation. I think also if you were in sports or if you were a high achieving kid, right? Maybe your report card came back a point too low, and it was instead of a 90, you got an 89, which is still really good. But your parents are I know you can do better. Come on. And these are the ones where I think it's masked behind, because there's the parents that are come on, I know you can do more, instead of just being hey, you already did great. What are some things maybe next time we can do if you want a higher grade? That's different, right? But I think, yeah, maybe that the pushing parents.
Yes, the ones who are really pushy. Yeah. It kind of reminds me almost of how when people online, I'm chronically online, I'm an elder millennial. Anyway, people talk about narcissistic moms.
Yeah.
And how you're yeah. The way you reacted.
I've been there.
Yeah. And I think that it's putting the mom's needs ahead of the child's needs, and I have to look good. So if you look bad, that means I look bad.
Yes.
Right? So I think that that can definitely be a thing. I think that's a more extreme example, but that stems from emotional immaturity,
That's
right?
like, I would say that's like the highest level of it,
Mhm, mhm.
you know?
Like the
No,
spectrum you were
absolutely.
talking about, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. No, I mean, you have a great point because even then, like in that scenario, I think it's like a culmination of all the things we've talked about today.
Mhm.
There's a narcissistic parent who is struggling to regulate their emotions because they don't want to be perceived a certain way. So then there's the child trying to make sure that the parent has all their needs covered. And this is a parent that like always suffers more than you, always struggles more than you.
It's about
It's
them.
always about them. And so, yeah, by default, you learn like, well, I don't matter. So then
Mhm.
in other relationships, this might look like putting yourself on the back burn, but then also getting to a point where it's just so much that you blow up and then you start to externalize.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. You know, it also reminds me of like when somebody grows up with these patterns of
Mhm.
emotionally immature parents. Um, I know that a lot of people that I see in therapy are dealing with this issue from their childhoods or from their moms or whatever, and now they're raising their own kids. You know, I think that this podcast is for awareness so that even if you are a parent yourself and you recognize those old patterns from your own upbringing, you can break those cycles.
Yeah.
And I call it like conscious parenting, right? And I think there's a lot of communities out there about that. You can research it, but basically it's being able to watch your own reactions, like regulate first, and then you can act or behave or respond, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just being reactive and this is about me and like my dysregulation, my discomfort. You need to make me comfortable right now because I'm so dysregulated, right? So, for example, you gave the example of a child spilling water or milk, right? I think with my parents, it wasn't necessarily like yelling or like, oh my God, what the hell? It was more like, like fear. Immediately, everything is fear, right? So, which makes total sense that I have like anxiety issues, but whatever. I think that when a parent reacts really quickly, then all these things we talked about before, like being hyper vigilant about somebody's emotions. Oh my God, what did I do wrong? I don't want to fail. I don't want to disappoint them. Becoming second in other people's lives. All those things matter. And yes, it is that deep. Spilling a glass of milk or overreacting is that deep, especially if you're doing it on a consistent basis, right? So we're not saying, again, all parents who react this way are bad parents or that you're all narcissists or something like that. No, it's just becoming aware of these patterns, being able to say, you know what, I have this urge to react. Like for me, it comes across as an urge of like,
I have to get that done.
I have to like, oh God, okay, like let's pick it up. But I have to, what I try to do is I'm like, okay, let me step back and assess the situation. Did anybody get hurt? No. Okay. It's water. It's going to dry. Cool. But that's being able to regulate going from the bottom up in the brain, right? So taking a couple of deep breaths, assessing the situation, and being able to respond instead of react and engage the front brain with critical thinking. Like, if I yell and react, how is that going to impact my child?
Yeah.
I don't want them to learn that there's like urgency or fear when it's something so simple as water being spilled. Right?
And I think understanding those reactions are the key to understand that you've experienced or had an experience with an emotionally immature parent. And it reminds me, I was thinking of something that one of my favorite things to do in session, and this usually comes after like we've been talking about it, and like I can clearly see the pattern that like there's some reactiveness stuff like going on because of your parents and stuff like that. But I will usually purposefully grab either like my little fidget box or something because I have like all the little toys in there, and I'll go like, how do you feel about that? And then you can immediately gauge somebody's like,
like, why'd you do that?
yeah. Or like if I drop something and they run to pick it up and I'm like, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there for a second because they're just toys and I can always pick them up after. Or if we do like some kind of hands-on activity and they're quick to start picking up, I'm like, just leave it. Like I'll take it care of. Like I'll get it taken care of. Part of my job. But that's usually such a big warning sign. And it's funny. Oh wait, well, funny, not funny. But to see it in people who are like, I had a great childhood, but then they're talking about all of these like really harmful patterns because that little move that I do helps them understand like, oh fuck, Oh, like,
Wow, this is actually happening to me right now. And I think it's when what you were talking about, like the more covert ways that it slips in.
mhm.
Like, oh, well, I think you can do better than an 89.
Yeah.
And it to the outsider, it might be like, wow, like they really have their child under control, or look at how encouraging
So
that
well
parent is, so
behaved.
well behaved and so um I don't know, involved. What an involved parent. They really care. And it's like, girl,
Mhm,
I think they're a little much, you know?
mhm, mhm.
So it's like little signs you have to be able to decipher because it doesn't come across as like straight up abuse many times. It does not.
No, it doesn't. So, from experiences that you've had, whether it's personal or with clients or with other relationships in your life, how have you noticed these patterns coming up in others? Maybe in work or other romantic relationships, friendships.
I don't know. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of different examples. I think for the population I work with, like older teenagers, young adults, and women, middle aged women, I see a lot of like care in their appearance where it becomes almost like obsessive. Like if they're they don't look a certain way or they're at a certain weight or a body size or something, then it's like they like panic because it's like disappointing somebody or they're not acceptable or they're not enough or they're broken in some way, right? I think also it comes across as like in relationships, I hear how maybe a spouse is like very nice to other people
Mhm.
and then when they come home they treat their spouse like total crap and
Mm.
it's like okay. So on the outside to other people, they look like they have it together. It's great. And then the examples that I gave earlier about
Yeah.
like kids, being raised by these adults, and then adults are like, oh, I don't want to cry in front of my kid. I don't want to let them know anything's happening. Um, it reminds me, sorry, real quick
Yeah.
about this, like it was a segment on NPR about a study they've done related to parents having healthy conflict in front of each other and how it might get messy sometimes or there might be yelling, but it's not like, hitting each other, abuse or anything like that or domestic violence. It's more like they're solving the problem intensely and then they do come to a solution that their kids end up being more like hardiness and grit increases and their problem solving skills increase because they were able to see what healthy conflict looks like. So sometimes parents don't want to fight in front of their kids, but obviously if you're fighting, like don't do that,
Yeah.
right? But if it's like let's figure this problem out, it's really intense, it's important, and it just happens to happen in front of the children, especially if there's a resolution, it makes sense that they'll be like, oh, okay, like I can handle a certain level of distress without freaking out or having a panic attack or dying,
Mhm, mhm.
Excuse me. So I think there's a lot of different ways that it shows up, but those are the ones that come to my mind
Yeah.
right now.
So let's discuss then, or let's give this little session some closure because there's also ways that we can heal from this,
Mhm.
though the journey can be challenging. I do
Oh, for
want to say.
sure.
Um, Sometimes it starts with, just learning to identify your emotions, period. And I think that whenever there's somebody that comes into session wanting to address issues with parents, the first thing I tend to run across is I don't know how to feel my emotions. Which we do. We do because having emotions is like a biological process of your body. You can't just remove them unless something is very wrong. Now we're talking about a more intense disorder, right? At that point, or a diagnosis. But I think learning to label your emotions are huge. And there's a lot of tools that maybe like in therapy you can explore, or even just like, I don't know, expanding your vocabulary is really, really helpful. But knowing what to call something when you feel it. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm feeling discouraged, or I'm feeling, I don't know, rejected. All of those things help us start somewhere. And then we can start working towards, okay, boundaries. Do I like experiencing this emotion? Yes or no? What made me or contributed to me feeling this emotion? And do I want to set a boundary there? Yes or no? Um, that also comes with letting go of guilt, though. When you
Mm.
decide that it's time to take care of yourself and set those boundaries, we're going to feel guilt because we're not used to it.
That's super hard, I have to say. I think it's hard to be
Yeah.
like, oh, damn, I feel bad for saying no or like we didn't go or whatever. But it's like, ni modo, like you already made the decision. Like, how helpful is that to be holding on to the guilt? It's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that also remembering that these patterns can be so ingrained that it is going to be difficult, just like you were saying. Like, healing from this kind of pattern and relational pattern is very challenging. And that's why I think when you go to therapy, you do need to be aware that, like, yeah, like, people might be in their healing era and it's like cool and hip to go to therapy or whatever, but like, honestly, it's so hard. Like, sometimes I tell my clients, like, sometimes therapy sucks because it's uncomfortable. Like, you have to do things like let go of guilt or uphold a boundary, or I don't know, like, yeah, just be stricter with yourself or with others. Even having boundaries for yourself, that's probably a whole other podcast topic. But identifying emotions when you don't have the emotional vocabulary. And I think it's so common. This is anecdotal. Sorry, I'm like going off on a tangent real quick. But like, when I ask people to name, like, how do you feel about that? The top 3 feelings I hear from like adults, not only kids, but like adults, are angry, happy, and sad. And it seems as if we are pruned from experiencing any other type of emotion. But the more accurate your emotions are, the better you're going to be at regulating them. So you were mentioning things like discouraged or disappointed or despondent. So it's not really about, high vocabulary and all this stuff. It's more like I'm labeling the feeling exactly accurately for what it is. So that way I can connect to it a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. So to recap, I think that we want to remind you that healing isn't about becoming a different person. It's about giving yourself permission to become the person that you didn't have space for before. And also applying that same knowledge to feelings, right? We are creating space for feelings, whether they're uncomfortable or pleasant emotions. They deserve to exist. And understanding that we don't have to act how we learned. Like, if you learn to function from a place of urgency, your emotions don't necessarily warrant action all the time. And it's about understanding what deserves our energy and not, and what works for you best.
I think this was a really good episode. I hope that you all enjoyed it as well. If you have experienced any of these things, or you're ready to start your therapy journey and you're in Texas or New Mexico, you can reach out to us at Clarity EP on Instagram or at Through the Eyes of a Therapist. If you enjoyed this episode, please also go to our Patreon page. We have sponsorships starting at, I think, $1 or $3 a month. It's very inexpensive, and it helps keep the podcast going.
Also, if you like this topic, go to our Instagram page to locate any book club that we will be starting, talking exactly about this topic. For anybody available, for anybody in Texas, we will be doing online sessions. And so go ahead and find us there if you're interested.
Yes, and in-person sessions. So Andrea's going to be facilitating a processing circle with the book Emotionally...
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And she's going to be using that curriculum to guide you through. And you all are going to meet, once every 2 weeks?
Once every 2 weeks. Yes.
Yeah.
In the evenings to make it flexible for everybody.
And apparently it's popular, so space is limited. So if you want to do that, sign up ASAP at the link below. And thanks for listening to Through the Eyes of a Therapist, and for joining us wherever you are. Don't forget to like and comment and share. I'm Crystal Acosta and co-host Andrea Luna, and we'll catch you on the next one.